Hi Year 9, Mr. Tapley here to walk you through your next lesson of Year 9 Humanities in Term 2, Week 11. This lesson is going to be a bit different to our previous lessons working on the economics cat. I just think that after remote learning, after assessment week where you've had 100 assessments and you guys have been working really hard on this economics cat, I thought I'm not going to start a new topic. I'm not going to give them any additional economics content to do in the last week of term. I thought, you know what, this would be a great opportunity to instead explore the Year 10 subjects electives being offered at the school in 2021. So additional information about subject selection, about the Year 10 course structure, that will be provided by middle school, either at the end of term 2 or at the start of term 3. This lesson, all we're really doing is showing you what is on offer, just showing you some of the selection options for humanities next year. So don't get stressed, don't panic, don't think, oh, I need to organize my subject selections by the end of this lesson. The laptop's not going to explode, Miss Pereira's not going to block you in the classroom until you finish this. Really, we just wanted to give you guys a little sneak peek, a little spoiler for what we're doing in humanities in 2021. So what you're doing this lesson, and again, the instructions are all in Compass lesson plan, just like the remote learning lessons that we've done in the past. Use the instructions below in this little guide here to access the relevant resources and complete the worksheet questions at the bottom of the page. So you can see here we've got a little step-by-step guide to access the 2021 Humanities electives. Got some screenshots of the websites as well, so you don't get lost. Those are the 4 subjects that I'll be explaining in a bit more detail later on. And then at the bottom of the page, it's just a couple of questions really asking, what are you interested in, why are you interested in it, and what can we do to make your humanities experience in Year 10 next year interesting? What can we do to make it more enjoyable for you guys in 2021? We're looking for some feedback, some recommendations that we can hopefully use, again, to make sure you have the best experience possible in humanities in 2021. So step 1 for what we're doing today, and I should stress to my students that all this information is available in Google Classroom. So 2021 Year 10 at GWSC, click on that file there, that'll take you here. Complete the questions at the bottom of the worksheet by the end of the lesson, and then smash submit or turn in or hand it in, whatever it's called on the student version of Google Classroom. So first thing that we're doing to get there, GWSC subject website is accessible via Compass. So if I go to Compass, top left corner, you're looking for this little star tab here, school favorites. And the first option there is where we're going, 7 to 12 subjects at GWSC. So if you click on that, that'll take you to our little website here. And all you need to do is to scroll down and look for the subject areas. And we're looking for humanities, obviously, in this video. So you'll be clicking on that. And that'll take you to the humanities homepage, I suppose you'd call it. Just gives you a little general overview of Year 7 to Year 12, but what we're looking for specifically, and again, instructions are in this page here. What we're looking for is the Year 10 subject page. So we want to click on this little tab on the side, Year 7 to 10, and we're looking for Year 10. Double click that, and that will take you to our Year 10 page. Now I'm not going to go into too much detail about the Year 10 course structure and the selection process, but for a bit of background information, in 2020 your Year 10s, they've got a bit less flexibility in terms of what they're allowed to do for their Year 10 electives. So for example in humanities, they have 1 semester of history and then 1 semester of geography, and every Year 10 student completes that. And the feedback we were getting from students was, can you improve this? They wanted a bit more choice, a bit more flexibility, and so in humanities and the other subjects, science, health, etc., we're giving you guys a bit more choice, hopefully, student voice, student choice, a few more options for your Year 10 experience, which will hopefully improve the time you have at Glen Waverley. So what you've got for humanities in 2021, students will select at least one of these 4 options here. So you can either study health, wealth, disease, and disaster, how to get away with murder, you gotta fight for your rights, or the world on edge. So one of those 4 subjects you'll be studying in 2021. These are semester subjects as well, by the way, so each one runs for term 1 and 2 or term 3 and 4. You also have the opportunity to select 2 humanities subjects, so you can select 2 of these 4. You're doing at least one, but hopefully I'll be able to persuade you or peer pressure you into completing 2 humanities subjects. That's my unbiased opinion. So I'll go through each of these 4 subjects in a bit more detail. As you can see, if you click on those there over on the side here, it takes you to a little subject information page, I suppose you could call it. And with each of these we give you a bit of information about the unit, some of the information, some of the case studies you'll look at, examples, some of the key skills. There's a little FAQ section at the bottom. Some of the pages have images and videos that you can view to give you more information about the unit, but I'll try and go through this in a bit of detail myself. And if you have further questions, you can ask your humanities teacher, or you can ask the VCE humanities teachers who, for some of these subjects like the word on edge, this subject will kind of lead in nicely into the VCE version of this subject. It's not a prerequisite, but students who might do global politics in VCE, they might really enjoy the word on edge. So to get a better understanding of this subject, you might want to talk to Miss Bradbury or Mr. McFarlane, our VCE global politics teachers. And then to get some more info on these 2 subjects here, how to get away with murder and fight for your rights, you could talk to Miss Madarano or Mr. Imam, our VC history teachers. And then health, wealth, disease, disaster, Miss Mundy and Miss Greenberg are probably your best friends for this one. But I'll try and give you as much information as I can, and the rest of the information that you can't find on the site or from this silly video, I recommend speaking to your teachers. Cool. So, first one we'll go through is health, wealth, disease, and disaster. It's a mouthful to say, very long subject. What I would probably call this subject is people and places, is probably the simple summary of this subject. You're looking at everything outside your window. You're looking at the environment, you're looking at human life around the world, how is it different in different places around the world. Some people have ridiculous wealth, like this car that Mrs. Tapley drives. Some people live in advert poverty, like that rubble that used to be Mrs. Tapley's house. And then you'll look at the environment, how humans interact with the environment. So you'll look at natural disasters, like the very relevant 2020 Australian bushfires. That kangaroo actually looks photoshopped, but I promise that's a real photo from the bushfires. You'll look at disease, such as COVID-19, coronavirus. You'll look at how these 2 major units, so health and wealth, focusing on human life, and then disease and disaster, focusing on the environment. Looking at how those 2 topics are connected, I suppose, is the major theme. So how does human activity link to disease, to the spread of COVID-19? How has climate change and global warming accelerated the intensity and the frequency of these natural disasters, these bushfires that we haven't seen such devastating impact from in the past? And how do we prevent future loss of life? How do we improve life for everyone? So that's what you're looking at in this unit here. Again, some of the case studies you'll be looking at, the New Zealand White Island volcano eruption, so that was very, very recently, Christchurch earthquake, Japanese tsunami, Indonesian floods, cyclones. Those are some of the natural disasters you'll be looking at. In terms of disease, you might look at COVID, so coronavirus, Ebola, HIV in Africa. And some of these videos here will give you a bit of an insight into some of those topics we'll be exploring, so I highly recommend you check out the videos. This one in particular was very cool, in my opinion. This actually shows you real footage on the ground of the Japanese tsunami, so definitely go check that out. And yeah, that's what you're looking at in this subject here, people and places around the world. Health, wealth, disease, and disaster. Second subject we're looking at is how to get away with murder, ? We did consider putting an exclamation point there, so give some feedback if you want that. So this topic here is looking at, basically how mass loss of life, how genocide, how massive extinction events of humanity, I suppose you'd call them, how events like the Holocaust, how the dropping of the atomic bombs in World War II, Japan, Nagasaki, Hiroshima, how these events occurred and why they occurred and why nothing or no one was able to stop them from happening. I remember in high school when I was reading about the Holocaust, when I was reading about World War II and Hitler and the Nazi Party, the thought I kept coming back to was, how did this happen? Why did no one stop this from happening? How could this possibly be okay for so many people involved? And that's what we're looking at in this subject here. If this subject is people and places, this subject is people and power. So how is power used by people to manipulate, to deceive society, to oppress people, to exploit society's fears, to get away with horrible, horrible atrocities? So those are some of the case studies you'll be looking at. Those are some of the skills you'll be developing. So cause and effect. A lot of these skills, again, aren't just relevant to history and humanities. You can apply these to other subjects. If you develop your skills of cause and consequence, cause and effect, you can use that in science. Use that in health and human development. Critical thinking, a very valuable skill to possess. Empathy, I'm hoping most of you have some of that already, but we'll hopefully develop it throughout this unit by looking at how these horrible events have happened, why they've happened, and what we can do to make sure they never happen again. I like that quote there from Martin Luther King Jr., and I suppose it segues nicely into our next subject, so I'll read that one out. The ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and the cruelty by the bad people, but is the silence over that by the good people. So it's the silence of these good people, the silent majority, that refuse to speak up when these atrocities are happening. Quote from Martin Luther King Jr., very famous African-American rights activist during the US Civil Rights Movement, which is something you'll be studying in this subject here. You gotta fight for your rights. And I'll give any student $10 if they can name what song that's referencing. So in this subject, as the name suggests, you'll be looking at human rights. Not so much what you looked at in Year 8, which was, how do I describe it? It was a bit boring. In Year 8, I guess you didn't really have the time and the scope to look into it in more detail. Year 8 was more of a basic understanding of here are human rights. This is more looking at why do we have human rights, how have we earned human rights over time, and importantly, why do some people not have human rights? Like, what's the impact on their lives if they don't have human rights? So you'll start out old school, you'll start in the 18th century BC, when Mr. Tapley was a little boy, looking at ancient Babylon. So looking at the first, I suppose, set of human rights, the first set of laws and codes of human rights. Then you'll progress into the present day, looking at Indigenous Australian civil rights movement, and then connecting that to the American civil rights movement with our good friend Martin Luther King Jr. And I really think this is a really interesting subject, not just because I enjoy history, but one of the best things I think, in my opinion, about having knowledge of history is I get students who say, why do I need to know about history? It happened in the past, it's gone, I don't care about it. Because history forms the present, and because your present will form the future. Understanding the past is the best way to understand where you're at now and to predict the future and to improve the future. So for example, the US Civil Rights Movement, with Martin Luther King, with Malcolm X, the events of that movement and what happened after that movement are very much connected to massive riots and protests in America right now around African American police brutality against the African Americans. The protests around George Floyd after he was murdered by a policeman in America. All those things are connected to what happened during this movement. And it's probably going to be connected to what happens after the current movement, the current protests. So I just think it's a really valuable skill to have and knowledge to have, being able to link the past to the present to understand the future. So that's what you'll learn in this subject here. And again, if you have more questions, I recommend speaking to our beloved history staff, either in Year 9 Humanities or our VC history crew, Mr. Amam and Miss Marano. And I apologize if I mispronounce her name more than once. And then the final subject we'll be looking at is the world on edge. And in this subject you learn about, wait for it, the world. You learn about the world around us, basically. So everything that's happening outside your window. You're learning about contemporary events, you're learning about current events that are having huge impacts on our present and also on our future. Topics like climate change, the rise of international terrorism, Mr. Tapley's celebrity doppelganger, Kim Jong-un, in North Korea, clashes of superpowers. So this one's a really interesting subject to learn, because I think, in my opinion at least, one of the worst things, one of the most frustrating things to experience is not understanding something. There's no worse feeling in the classroom as a student or a teacher to be sitting there and just saying, I have no idea what's happening right now. This subject will help you understand what is happening right now around the world. These global issues like climate change, like terrorism, this subject will help you understand them, understand where they've come from, and what we can do about them in the future. So I think it's a really, really interesting subject. It's not just textbook knowledge that you learn about and then write on a test and then you'll walk away from. This stuff is going to be happening in the present, it's going to be happening tomorrow, it's happening in the future. So you look at the causes of these issues, like climate change, like terrorism, you look at how they can be resolved, who is dealing with them. Really, that's global challenges and global solutions. So it's not just focused on a very small part of society or of Australia or of history. You're looking at world challenges and how to create change with these world issues. Like Obama said, change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. Good quote to end it on, I think. So that's the Humanities offerings in 2021, guys. Hopefully this information is useful to you, is interesting to you. Hopefully the videos helped explain some of those topics, those dot points in a bit more information. Again, what you're trying to smash out this lesson is looking at these 4 different subjects and then answering these questions at the bottom of the page. Why is it interesting? What are you least interested in? What would you recommend in the future for future humanities topics? What are some other ideas you'd like to investigate? Some other electives you think would be interesting? And once you finish with your humanities focus, which is the most important thing in the world, obviously, we'd like to ask you how we can improve the website, and also feel free to explore the other subject areas. So for example, if I could click on science, and if I was signed into my GWC email account, that's a good lesson for you guys. Don't repeat Mr. Tapley's mistakes. You'll see that some of the websites, some of the subject pages are a little bit different structured, but it's still giving you the same information. So we'd just go to Year 10 Science, and then we'd see the different science electives that they have on offer. So I believe it's question 4. Yeah, question 4, go have a look at the other subjects, science, PE, health, music, etc., and see what you might be interested in looking at in Year 10. The Earth and the Cosmos is probably my favorite science one, but anyway, I'm getting distracted. If you have any questions or concerns, guys, again, please let me know. Hope you guys are well. Again, well done on completing not just the Humanities Cat, but all the other 900 cats that you've had to deal with this term in the last couple of weeks. And yeah, thanks for listening. Best of luck, guys. Cheers.